Hello and welcome to week 3 of our Artist's Way check-in. I want to make this video a little quicker than last week because last week's was very long. So yeah, this was week 3. Had some exciting things happen this week. But let's just start by diving into the book, and then we will do a little check-in of how the Artist's Way is going for me in week 3. So this week was about recovering a sense of power. It says, this week may find you dealing with unaccustomed bursts of energy and sharp peaks of anger, joy, and grief. You are coming into your power as the illusory hold of your previously accepted limits is shaken. You will be asked to consciously experiment with spiritual open-mindedness. The first section addresses anger. It talks about how anger is fuel. It's a map that guides us. It lets us know where we've been and lets us know when we haven't liked it. And it's also a sign of health because anger, like anything else, is an emotion, and if you were never angry, you would be very passive in life and not have any boundaries. So if we can take our anger and translate it, that allows us to take action on it, healthy, positive action. One thing, and probably the biggest thing that stuck out to me, and a word that has been coming up for me recently, even outside of this book, when I read this, I was like, oh, like that's what that means, and that's why that word piqued my attention, because it's something that I do struggle with, and the word is sloth. I know you've probably heard it in the context of like animals, but biblically and like generally it has another meaning. I wrote down it's apathy, which is a lack of interest or enthusiasm, a lack of care. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this, but it gave another word, which was acedia, which is a deep inability to care about your duties, avoidance of duty, existential weariness, being comfortable with inactivity, procrastination, making excuses, and not having any zeal. That is something that I used to struggle with majorly. I think when I first moved here a few years ago, I didn't really know exactly who I was. I felt super lost. I felt like, everyone was getting to the age where they were figuring out their purpose, and I was like, I don't know exactly what mine is yet. I have not figured it out. And I wrote down another big vocab word, which was anhedonia, which is persistent sadness, despair, guilt, loss of joy. It's caused by dysregulation in your mesolimbic dopamine circuit, which is like your central reward center in your brain. And I think that's something that a lot of people, especially in their 20s, do struggle with. It can be, really easy to kind of get down on yourself and be in this pit and feel like no one understands you. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. There are people in your corner. There are people dealing with the same things that you're dealing with, and you are not alone in having those feelings. I also wrote down some different treatment options. I really kind of dove into this because I feel like me a few years ago could have really benefited from this information. And although I feel happy with myself and content with my life and I like where things are heading, like that could always change. And so I just want to be aware of the word sloth, what it means to me, what it's meant to me in the past, and how knowing the definition of this word, knowing, what can happen when you let yourself fall into this, and also knowing that there are options to, get better and get out of it. So for treatment options, I wrote CBT, which, if you don't know what that is, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. Basically helps rewire your brain. Another thing is having a consistent routine, making an effort daily to make connections with people, whether that's calling a friend, making plans, going out for dinner, drinks, going and doing an activity like a hike or a run, or going to the gym, or doing a group fitness class, or any kind of like group activity is great for helping with this. And you know, when you're going through sloth, I think it's also an indicator of depression, and the only way to get yourself out of that is to consciously make that choice. And that can be through just deciding, like, okay, I'm gonna go to a Pilates class today. Even though I don't really want to, I know in the long run it's gonna help me. So that was kind of the first section. I think the first section was the most important for me, and I wish I'd read it sooner in life. Then it goes into talking about synchronicity. The first lines are, answered prayers are scary because they imply responsibility. Answered prayers deliver us back to our own hand. I kind of talked about this in some of my previous videos, but like, sometimes we get what we ask for and we're like, okay, like that's scary, like now what do I do? An example was, a woman's thinking about going back to school and opens her mail to find a letter requesting her application from the very school she was thinking about going to. And then a quote, when a man takes one step towards God, God takes more steps than man. When a man takes one step towards God, God takes more steps toward that man than there are sands in the world of time. The universe will reward you for taking risks on its behalf. I think a big thing with synchronicity is it can be uncomfortable to accept the fact that there may be something greater than you and that you don't know everything. And sometimes when those coincidences happen, you can just brush them off and be like, you know, what are the odds, whatever. But like, what are the odds that that was meant to happen for you because you asked for it, or because you were paying attention and looking for it? It also says, but if an all-powerful and all-knowing force doesn't exist, well then we're off the hook, aren't we? There's no divine retribution, no divine consolation. And kind of is just saying, like, you know, if there is no God, then what's the use in being a good person? Then it says, if there is a responsive creative force that does hear us and act on our behalf, then we may really be able to do some things. We may have to move into action on those previously impossible dreams. Synchronicity can feel threatening, this is a note that I wrote, because it means that we must take action on these impossible dreams. Also talks about the possibility of an intelligent and responsive universe acting and reacting in our interests. Never ask whether you can do something, say instead that you are doing it. Then fasten your seatbelt, because shit's gonna go down, okay? This is something that I definitely practice in my life, which is choose what and not how. When I graduated college, I decided I wanted to start a business. I got my degree in business, and it was really hard for me to find a job because a lot of companies wanted someone that had previous marketing experience, and I didn't have any. So I went out and made my own. As time went on, now I've kind of realized, like, oh, that's not what I want for myself. I don't want to own a business. And now I'm kind of making that transition based on the desires that I have now. It says, we like to pretend it is hard to follow our heart's dreams. The truth is, it's difficult to avoid walking through the many doors that will open. Turn aside your dream and it will come back to you again. Get willing to follow it again, and a second mysterious door will swing open. The universe is prodigal in its support. We say we're scared of failure, but what frightens us more is the possibility of success. The next section is about shame. And it talks about how making art can feel very vulnerable, and the act of making art can expose a society to itself. Kind of like the idea of art brings the darkness into light. I wrote, a wound must be exposed to air and light to heal. I also talked about how I didn't write for a few years in college. Like, every assignment was online and I wasn't journaling. So for like 2 years, I literally didn't write a single thing. And that was absolutely me going through writer's block. It also talks about how actually finishing a piece of art might cause a lot of internal shame. Like in your childhood, if you were ever made to feel foolish for believing in yourself, kind of right when you're about to finish, you might get those thoughts of like, you know, this isn't like a good piece of work, I should just restart, there's all these things I need to fix, but like, you gotta just keep pushing through that. A big theme for this week, and something that I kept telling myself, was surrender to the flow of life. You can only get so many things done in a day, so do what you need to, do what you can, and the pieces will fall into place slowly but surely. You can't get everything done in a single day, so do what you can. Do something small. The book talks about healthy versus unhealthy criticism. Some examples. So negative criticism is criticism that disparages, dismisses, ridicules, or condemns. It's vague and difficult to refute. So as an artist, we have to learn when to seek out the right criticism. And here's a good little bit. It says, we must learn when our art reveals the secret of the human soul. Those watching it may try to shame us for making it. She also tells a story about how she produced a film, it got a horrible review, and then later her film was chosen to be in a European film festival. When she got kind of like ridiculed, got that bad review, she went for a walk through Rock Creek, and she made a list of compliments that she had previously received for her work, which is kind of saying like self-love and praise is the antidote for shame. So kind of just goes back to what you tell yourself becomes true, and you have to just show up for yourself continuously, like even if it's difficult. Useful criticism feels like a breath of fresh air. It's like a missing puzzle piece. It's like when you're staring at something for hours and hours and you can't figure out what's wrong with it. You show someone you trust They tell you it's great, but they also give you their input, and their input is like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. You're right. I'm going to take that and I'm going to use that criticism. It gives rules for hearing criticism. I'm not going to get into it, but the main thing is just when you receive criticism that doesn't feel good, you got to get back on the horse and keep going. There were some tasks within the chapters that I did. It also talks about how growth happens in spurts. It's not like consistent. So some days it can feel like you're not getting anything done, and then other days you're like, whoa, I got so much done. So don't be discouraged, basically. There were a lot of good tasks this week. I looked at some of my bad habits that I want to work on. I talked about what I liked about my room as a kid. One of the things was I had a lot of posters of music, and I have a couple posters that I want to hang up. What else? Talked about make lists of people you admire, people you secretly admire, people you admire that are dead, and kind of like write down some traits from those people that you think like make a good friend or confidant. And that was pretty much everything for this chapter. I did my morning pages every day except yesterday. I kind of was mentally preparing because I had a really long day yesterday. I basically was with a client all day. I have booked some artists for the show, and so I got to watch a bunch of live performances, which was fun, and had lots of great food and drinks, and it wasn't too hot, which was great. But yeah, I did not journal yesterday. I did do my artist date this week. I don't even know if I want to say this because it's like kind of a new thing that I'm working on curating, but I bought an old iPod and I want to just like really get familiar with some of my favorite artists. Like I've just been super into like 2000s nostalgic music, like Alanis Morissette, Anna Nalick, Nora Jones, Amy Winehouse. Of course, I love Amy Winehouse, and I absolutely wrote down that I would hang out with her. We would be besties. The crazy woman that she is, I love her. What else did I download? I downloaded Ray's album because I think it's just a masterpiece. I think for modern day music, she is ahead of the game. Like she's doing amazing things, and I look up to Ray so much. And then a couple Ella Langley songs too. I'm also a big fan of her, and I love her work, and I admire her a lot. Super hardworking, very down to earth, and just seems like a really cool person, to be honest. Also has great style. Did I experience any synchronicity this week? I did. What was it? I can't remember what exactly it was, but I feel like I have been having moments where things just feel very aligned, and I've been telling myself surrender to the flow of life. So like day to day, I've just been feeling a lot more relaxed and not as stressed. The main reason I bought the iPod is because I've been like walking outside more, and I'm gonna be starting this new job and just want to be able to like do it with no distractions and just be able to have my music. So I also did a lot of walking outside, went on a hike. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that. Like It's one of those things where sometimes you get busy and like forget, but I want to start incorporating more outdoor walks, not even as like a method of fitness, but just as like kind of a meditative practice. It feels good to get outside, even if it's just for 15 minutes. Kind of helps like break up the day too. Were there any issues significant for your recovery? No. I guess one thing I noticed is that I can be kind of rigid when it comes to plans. Like, I don't like when people change the time for things last minute. I find that I'm not very understanding about that, and I want to work on it because we all have our own schedules and things going on, and sometimes other things take precedence that are out of our control, and that's okay. So that's one thing that I became aware of within myself this week, and I think you should value your time, and your time is precious and important, but also, you know, other people have their own things going on, and if something doesn't work out, like, fill your time wisely in other ways. You can't control other people's lives. So that was week 3. We freaking did it. And now we're doing week 4. Week 4, I have a lot going on next week. I'm not even gonna lie. Am I a little worried about balancing it all? Yeah. Do I also know that I can do it and it's gonna turn out better than I expect? Absolutely. But week 4 is about recovering a sense of integrity. Long story short, it says it's going to be about introspection, integration, self-awareness, and that some changes are going to be taking place here. So I am excited for week 4. I enjoyed week 3. It didn't feel like life-changing, but it felt steady and calm and manageable, and I look forward to doing my morning pages every morning. I think everyone should at least just try the morning pages. Try them for a week and just see how you feel. So that's my piece for today. Thanks for watching, and future Carly, if you're watching this, you're awesome. You're beautiful, amazing. You look great. You always say awesome things, and you're incredible. And so is anyone else that's watching this. So until next week.